Uh, I want to give a shout out to Anissa, who is recording this morning and being our moderator. Uh, so welcome everybody to InsightLA. I'm speaking to you from Venice, from the unceded lands of the Tongva, sometimes called Keys, indigenous people who lived here before us. And I'm the founder of InsightLA, which has been around now for 20 years. This is the year of our 20 years anniversary, and I don't know if there's going to be any celebration of it. I'm not in charge of these things anymore. If I were, there would be, but we'll see what happens. And so today I want to speak to you about a few things. Tomorrow is Memorial Day, which is always a mixed, interesting day, both, heralding the beginning of summer and beaches and barbecue, but at the same time, a day of remembrance of everyone who died, the soldiers who gave their lives for this country, and it's still going on. The war is still going on, and not to mention the undeclared war on our children and black and brown people, and well, all the victims of mass shootings, which we also have to name and honor, I think, on Memorial Day, or create a special day. I don't know, but it's really important to name and honor, or nothing will change. And I also want to mention that today and tomorrow are the last couple days of Asian American and Pacific Islander month. And that really represents a huge swath of the population of our country. So I want to talk a little bit about that too, and how the teachings can help us be informed and anti-racist and compassionate, and really help us hold all the things that are happening in the world right now. So for those of you who may be new to InsightLA, I don't know if anybody's new here, but if you are, we divide the time. It's not morning for everybody. It's very early morning for some of you. We divide the morning basically into three. First, we do a meditation, then we have some teaching, and then we have some exchange with you and me. And then we have some breakout. Will there be great breakout groups afterwards, Anissa, today?
Yes, there will be.
Yeah, and so I'll say a few words about those too at the end. I really encourage people to join them, get to know each other better, and and also to be sure in the breakout groups to really just speak from your own experience, and not so much comment on others. So we'll talk about that at the end. Anyway, let's begin by sitting together. Do some meditation. Begin and end with the sound of the bell. And we mostly sit in silence. I'll do some prompts, but just deeply appreciate the silence as well. Noticing how it is for you this morning. Taking a deep breath in and releasing that breath if it helps you settle into the body and just being here together. Your mind is jumpy and all over the place. Clark, could you mute yourself? Thank you.
Robert, I'm muted.
Noticing the sounds of life around us and how those sounds can help us remember to be right here, right now. We only hear the sounds of this moment, not yesterday's or tomorrow's. So sound is a good subject of meditation. And as I was saying, if your mind is busy and jumpy this morning, just bring a little more attention to the out breath. That more calming, relaxing, releasing breath as you breathe out. If it's sleepy or dull, just bring a little more attention to the in-breath, the energizing breath. And remembering when you notice the mind is wandering around into the past or the future, just very gently moving your body back, maybe just even an inch, half an inch. If you're lying down, just relaxing a little more deeply into the earth, into the ground. Just stepping back to receive the moment. Just riding the waves of joys and sorrows. And if a big emotion comes, just noticing how it is in the body, sensing and feeling the sensations in the body. And trusting the immense value of being present with experience, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, no matter what. Just steadying the presence with the breath, with awareness of the sounds of life, the sensations in the body, and this stream of consciousness, just sitting on the banks of the stream and watching it all flow by. And with each moment of coming back to being present, we refresh and remake the world. Fresh and new, beginning anew, moment by moment. And for the last few minutes of this meditation, just offering some appreciation to yourself for taking this time, for being present, for having the intention to be present to your life. And just offering an inner bow of respect and thanks to yourself for simply being here, right here, right now. So I forgot something that I want to share with you. I'll be right back. I want to get it. Okay, so welcome again, everybody. Yeah, so I just want to begin to say a few words about Memorial Day. You know, Memorial Day, it's really for most of us a pretty fun day, the beginning of summer, unofficially, of course, but you know, feeling that it's time for the beach, it's time for some get together, it's time, it's a holiday, right? And since the abolishment of the draft, most of us don't even know people in the armed forces, people who have gone to war, people who are fighting the ongoing war in our country, in our life. And so it's kind of strange. We forget that Memorial Day is a day of remembrance. It's actually a solemn day of remembrance of people who have died, who gave their lives for this country. And whatever you or I may feel about war, and I'm certainly anti-war and anti-violence, and at the same time, I really do respect people who choose to really give their lives to something that's bigger than themselves, and in this case, their love for this country. And it's traditional on Veterans Day to pause and have a moment of silence in the afternoon. But I think it was President Clinton who established the National Moment of Remembrance, a program to remind us, to remind all Americans of the honorable contributions made by people who died while defending this country. And so to honor those folks, we're asked tomorrow to take a pause, to reflect for 1 minute. You're all meditators, you know how to be present for a minute. For 1 minute, you know, local time, wherever you are in America anyway, you know, to just pause. They're not even asking for meditation or anything special except to remember and acknowledge the sons and daughters of this country who offered their lives in this, believing, trusting that they were protecting our freedom and our safety. And it's really something, I think, just to be aware. We often will say Happy Memorial Day, and this is very painful to military families or people, not even maybe people who've lost somebody, but especially to Gold Star families and people who have lost a loved one. But it's a day to remember, yes, all the soldiers, but also the people who lost their lives in training, because that happens too, and the many people veterans who died because of their mental injuries, because of their trauma, because of the emotional injuries that they sustained on the battlefield. So I just want to acknowledge this. And as I said earlier, you know, I don't know, maybe we need a separate day, or would it dishonor the people from the armed forces if we added in, you know, the victims of mass shootings and their families? But I feel like we're going to need a day to acknowledge this too, the people who've died in this undeclared war on our children, on black and brown people in our streets, because we're holding the grief, especially when it's children in school, little kids who aren't ever going to get to graduate the way my grandson did. He graduated from high school Friday. It was such a happy occasion. He was so proud of himself. He was a captain of his varsity tennis team who really injured his knee and had to sit out the last part of the season. And he had his leg in this huge brace from his surgery, but he managed to walk across the stage without his crutches. His mom was freaking out, but he did it, and he was very happy. He graduated from high school magna cum laude. We're very proud of him. But, it's just the joys and sorrows of life, right? We get to celebrate his graduation, and some parents won't be able to. So just holding all of that in my heart, in your heart, and lots more too. And I always have to say, no matter how you feel about war, because it doesn't matter. These are still folks who gave their lives. And then I also wanted to speak about these last couple days of Asian American and Pacific Islander Month. And this feels important because so often this whole huge cohort of people, I mean, that's all of Asia. That's, East Asia, South Asia, India, I mean, all of Asia. And then the Pacific Islanders, who usually get kind of subsumed and not so much maybe noticed or brought forward in all of that. Just countless people who've built our railroads, made inventions, made incredible art, and shared their culture, made important scientific discoveries in physics and other fields of science, and the more we can learn and appreciate the contributions of different cultures to our country, of course, this is a way to combat racism and to be anti-racists, actually, and to substitute our learning and appreciation for not knowing, for the ignorance of each other's cultures. So I was curious about why the month of May to commemorate Asian American and Pacific Islander heritage. And so I did a little research, and I discovered that May was designated to reference two dates, May 7th and May 10th. And May 7th was the date of the very first Japanese immigrants arriving in 1863 to our country. And May 10th, that was 1843. And in 1869, on May 10th, it's called Golden Spike Day. It was the completion of the first transcontinental railroad in the U.S., which had huge contributions from Chinese workers who came to this country to work on it. There were about, I think, 15,000 or 20,000 Chinese immigrants who were part of this construction of the railroad all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. And it cut the time of travel across the United States from months, literally months, to less than 1 week. So this was a huge development in our country. And yet, there were a lot of railroad workers needed. A lot of the white people didn't want to do that work. And the Chinese workers came and helped and built it, but at the same time, they were paid lower wages. They had to work longer hours. I think they had to pay for their own lunches. There were a lot of exploitive things that happened to those workers. And of course, there's a history of racism and exploitation, which we don't have to go into this morning, but just to be aware, this is a history that has been from the 19th century through the 20th century and today, actually culminating in the last few years since President Trump started calling COVID a Chinese virus or a Kung Fu virus. And anti-Asian hate crimes just spiked after that. They've been happening anyway, but so that's been a painful part of acknowledging AAPI month. But then there are fun things too. Like I learned about a dish you may know about. It's from the Philippines called, I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, pancit, Pancit. And that, did you know that that pasta was invented in China? That China's food influence has been global for centuries, but it was the Chinese who introduced noodles or pasta to the Italians. And it was the Chinese who introduced the noodles to the Philippines that became this dish. And then I learned something, and I think of how many times I would cut spaghetti, so kids could eat it more easily instead of having to twine their forks, around and around through the pasta. But long noodles symbolize long life, in case you didn't know that. You won't cut your noodles anymore. I won't anyway. So the origins of pancit, of this dish, go back as far as the 16th century when the oldest Chinatown was founded in Manila in the Philippines by Chinese traders and immigrants. And one person said, well, this is a fusion of 400 years of Spanish food, too, coupled with Chinese, Malayan, Japanese influences, and then American things on top of it. And so much of our food culture is mixtures like this that have really, really made eating a lot more fun. I grew up before many of you were born. I grew up in the 50s, and oh my gosh, our diet was what? Hamburgers, frozen French fries, fish sticks on a cookie sheet, ketchup, tuna fish sandwiches. It just wasn't what it is today. But on a more serious note about our teachings, no matter what the circumstances, really, the only way to combat racism and hatred is through compassion. And this is something that I am so grateful that I learned from my Asian teachers, my teachers who came from Korea, from Japan, from China, from Tibet. I was really fortunate to study with a wave of Asian teachers who came in the 60s and 70s to teach Westerners, to teach us. And of course, the Buddhist teachings had already been here for 100 years before, but those teachings were largely taught and celebrated in the ethnic Buddhist communities and in the languages of those communities. And Thich Nhat Hanh said, hatred, violence, anger can only be neutralized and healed by one substance, and that substance is compassion. The antidote of hatred, anger, violence is compassion. He said there's no other medicine. And he went on to say that the trouble is that you can't just go to the market and buy compassion. You can't just pull it off the shelf like popcorn or detergent or the other things you go and buy. Compassion, they're not commodities that we can buy and get for ourselves so that we'll be wise and compassionate. Although we do kind of try to do that with the practice. But we kind of magically hope sometimes that a certain teacher or teaching will just rub off on us, and yet at the root of that longing. I wish I could go to Ralph's and buy compassion and bring it home, but at the root of that longing, it sounds silly, is the wish to alleviate suffering and to grow in wisdom and kindness in our lives, right? And so it's too bad we can't just get them and own them. But at the same time, we can develop a relationship with them. And that's what we do here together. Listening to teachings, listening to each other, listening to ourselves in meditation, developing an intimate relationship and friendship in the broadest, deepest sense of friendship for ourselves. And the friendlier we are with ourselves, it is axiomatic that we will experience more affection and friendly feelings toward others. And of course, I'm not just talking about I am talking right now about human relationship and friendship, but it's also true that the more intimately we connect with our own nature, our own aliveness, the more we're also aware of the creatures around us, even if it's just crows and squirrels. Not to be prejudicial about crows and squirrels, but I meant to say if there's not that much variety of wildlife around you that you can see. And, the Buddha was a wandering saint, basically, wandered around northern India for 40 years, teaching, carrying his begging bowl, and bringing peace and comfort to all those whose lives he touched, who came to hear him, hear his teachings, and practice what he taught. And this practice brings happiness to us like that, in the same way. The Buddha is still offering his bowl to us, each one of us, every moment, with the teachings that we practice here, the teachings of sila, samadhi, prajna, of ethical living, of goodness, of gathering our wits about us and focusing and meditating, and prajna, the wisdom that comes out of that. This is how we learn to give freely to ourselves and from ourselves to each other. And this really does put us in the happy zone. It does bring happiness. And our practice, too, teaches us resilience, a way to incline our minds toward the positive. And I was at a dinner the other night, and somebody was asking what to do for a friend. It was a young person, a young adult, asking what to do for a friend who was sort of chronically anxious and depressed and having mental health issues, like so many people are right now. And we were just saying, what people aren't taught and don't realize is that we have the capacity to shift our attention, that we have the capacity to redirect, to change the channel, and to direct into the positive and that which is. And it's different from, refusing to look at the negative, refusing to look at anything that isn't positive or happy. But we do have this capacity to incline our hearts toward kindness, toward love, toward compassion, toward the things that we teach here, and towards that which inspires us. And one of the things that really inspired me this past week, actually one of the many things, was this book that Duncan Williams put together with Emily Anderson. These are the people who mounted the exhibit at the Japanese American Museum, called Sutra and Bible. And it's a book about the Japanese people who were incarcerated during World War II, put in concentration camps in our country. And what really is, it's a beautiful book, but the part that really, that I wanted to share with you this morning, many beautiful, beautiful photographs and things, was the story. There was a mystery a little background. When people went to the internment camps, soldiers, the American military confiscated everything that was written in Japanese. And that meant they lost their sutras, their Bibles, their sacred texts, that whatever was in Japanese was taken from them. And so it's just hard to fathom what that would mean. You just imagine somebody coming in and taking all your Dharma books, just the things that you may treasure. And it's just very poignant what people did. What they did to try to recreate some of these teachings while they were in the camps. And what they found this treasure trove of stones that they were discovered in here's a picture of them, and I'll show you some other pictures too. These stones were found in 1956 by a worker. Can you see them? You see them. They were found by an employee of the Bureau of Reclamation who was digging near an abandoned camp cemetery near Heart Mountain, one of the big internment camps. And he hit something metal, and he was with his grader, and he was afraid maybe he had disturbed a casket. So he stopped, and he discovered a container of these stones. And it contained almost 2,000 stones with a single ideogram, beautiful calligraphy on each stone. And he gave it to some ranchers who kept them, and then finally gave them to the Japanese American National Museum. And at that point, I think there were about 500 stones missing, but they still had a lot of them. And they discovered that it was actually volumes of the Lotus Sutra that had been copied onto these stones and hidden as a way for congregations to have some of the holy texts. And it's also part of a tradition of copying sutras. It's tradition in Asia, but it was also a tradition in Christianity, especially in the Middle Ages, where monks copied texts and then did beautiful illuminated drawings around them. And they made Bibles, and then it's a story of the people who discovered how they put together the stones to discover that it was actually a secret scripture that was made for the people in the camp to, keep the meaning in their lives. They found these scattered stones and put them together. And I just, I find this story they're very beautiful, I think. And the story is moving to me. And this is a picture of, this is a picture of this Nichiren Buddhist priest at Heart Mountain named Nishikan Murakita, and he was a master calligrapher. And this picture actually also touches me. It's a picture of Reverend Murakita waving from the train that was taking him from the camp to a prisoner repatriation program in Japan. And just the expression on his face as he waves goodbye, it's just very, very touching to me. And so this book for me put a lot of personal stories to the history that we've learned and know, or maybe you didn't know, but most of you probably did, about what happened during that pretty ugly time in our country's history. And I also wanted to share with you I really had fun doing research for this. I really enjoyed it a lot. And one of the things I found was a list of 18 books written by AAPI authors, the 18 favorite books of prominent AAPI writers. And so, Anissa, if you could post that in the chat, post the list. Because the list, the list also has people from all walks of life writing about their experience. People from many of the different Asian countries and also Pacific Islander countries of, Polynesia, French Polynesia, Samoa, Hawaii, and so forth. And then among the AAPI people are also lesbians, gays, trans people, people with disabilities, all the whole gamut of other identities enfolded into all these folks too. And just for me, it's just remembering how much we belong to each other and how much we need each other and how much we need to be aware of othering, of making each other different, other, distance that dehumanizes us, as opposed to that friendliness that I was talking about earlier in relationship with ourselves and each other. And that this is the antidote to building walls, to segregating, to locking up, to creating structural othering, like a building where you can't get in if you're in a wheelchair, for example. There's lots of ways that we can address these things together. And the primary first way, really, I think, is through awareness, a kind of loving awareness and a willingness to learn and see. So I want to close by just reminding everybody that when events like the shootings in Buffalo and Texas happen and they become huge news everywhere and they break our hearts, it makes us feel that maybe these events are more likely to happen than they actually are. And it's important, I think, to realize that the world may not be quite as dangerous for ourselves as we imagine it to be. I had an experience at my swimming pool, LA Fitness, which is an outdoor pool. It has an outdoor shower, so I don't have to go up in the locker room. And I just was in the bathroom changing after the shower, and I had locked the door of the bathroom, and I heard somebody scream outside. And my first impulse was to look at the locked door and wonder, could somebody shoot through that lock and get in? And I've never had a thought like that. It would just be, somebody shouted, right? But the fact that that thought entered my mind just showed me, we're all a little traumatized by these things, even happening at a distance. And so it's really important to orient ourselves toward that which is peaceful and beautiful, the beauty that's here in life in all kinds of ways, spending time with friends that you have, maybe listening to a playlist with songs from, I don't know, your high school days, thinking of my son graduating, reading comic graphic novels or watching comedies. Those are just sort of very silly practical things besides practicing meditation and the teachings that, as I was saying earlier, can put us in the happy zone. And I also want to remind everybody, in terms of understanding and respecting each other, that, excuse me, that in our small groups, in the breakout groups that meet 10 minutes after the close of this meeting, that we're learning something about intimacy in these groups by listening, by learning, by getting to know each other. And I really want to encourage everybody to follow a simple rule, which is that please don't offer advice to anybody or comment on what they may have shared unless they ask you to. So when you speak, you're speaking from your own experience, of your own practice, your own questions, your own reflections, all of that, and not really commenting on someone else's voice or their own sharing and comment. Because there was a little incident in one of the groups last week where somebody with perfectly well-intentioned made a comment that was not well received, because it wasn't, it was about that other person and not themselves, and sort of offering advice. And it's actually not that welcome. You know what it feels like to get unsolicited advice from people. So just being mindful about speaking from your own experience, and to remember always this week, next week, to remember the billion acts of kindness that are happening, well, millions anyway, probably a billion, all the time in the world. Somebody making breakfast for somebody making the bed, somebody, just the littlest things going on constantly. It's important to remember that even during this talk, the world has been recreating itself. Babies have been born, um, and people have graduated, and people have gotten married, and people, so just appreciating all the different ways that we and others are participating in the remaking of the world. So this was a little long, but it was lots that I wanted to share with you today. And now I want to open for your reflections, responses. Wow, okay, the Chinese invented ice cream too. Um, Thank you. Thank you for that, Charles. Yeah, anything that you would like to that's speak about, that's in your heart, and um, you can raise your hand with the reaction button at the bottom of the screen to the right, or since we are a small group today, you can just wave wildly and Anissa will see you and help you unmute, or you can put it in the chat if you don't want to turn your camera on. You can also talk to me if you want with your camera off. It's fine. I know that was a lot of stuff, but maybe some of it you have some thoughts or feelings about. And I always feel like saying, and quiet people speak up. Of course, quiet people by definition do not speak up, but maybe you can do something different if you're a quiet one. And I can see Margot petting her kitty. And I think that's such a good thing to do in moments of whatever. They're good, really, for all moments, but especially for moments when we might need some comfort.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, I can barely hear you.
Oh, okay. I'll
There,
speak
there.
up.
I can hear you better now, Sarah.
Okay, I'll speak up louder than.
Yeah, I can
Excuse
hear you
me.
better.
I've been trying to write an essay about my racism and I grew up in the 50s in the Jim Crow South, and I knew nothing but the Jim Crow South till I was 18. Well, anyway, so I get closer and closer to that project. But the compassion thing just reminded me so much of something that has just been a lot to me, which is what Trayvon Martin's mother said, that what we need is a change of heart, and that's much harder than changing laws.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you for that. And I hope that they go together too, Sarah, that as hearts change, laws will have to change. Yeah. And by the way, you weren't speaking that softly. My volume wasn't turned all the way up, so thank you. Yeah. I was wondering how the Chinese would have invented ice cream when it isn't so much dairy food, but then I remembered traveling in big China in 1985 and eating red bean popsicles. And so, yeah, there was what we would probably call sorbet, more than ice cream, but yeah, it was delicious.
There's a story behind that. I don't know if it's true or not, but if you want to hear it, it's short.
Yeah.
Well, allegedly at the time, the emperor was getting bored with the food that his main chef was cooking and said, you better do something different that it's going to really appeal to me, or your head's going to be cut off. And he had his people go up to the snow and blah, 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 and figured out a way and invented ice cream, and it pleased the emperor, and he was saved. So I don't know if it's true, but it's a great story.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Rick has a question or would like to speak. He's in the posted a chat.
Yes, it says, Trudy, is the distinction between dwelling in the good and living in denial always clear to you? That's a great question, Rick. Um, it's clear to me, but it's clear to me because I know, how would I put this? It's clear to me for myself. It's not clear to me for everybody else. And I think the way for us to be clear in ourselves about when we're in denial, I mean, I witnessed an interaction at a gathering. Actually, it was at a gathering for my grandson's graduation. I witnessed an interaction between some people where one person was saying something. They were talking about a painful experience they had with somebody else, and the other person listening cut them off and said, uh, "We don't want to hear about that. We don't want to hear about anything. Just talk about what's good and pleasant here." And I thought, okay, that's a kind of denial. You see, where there's no willingness really to look at um, the things that might be painful or unpleasant. Um, I don't know, Rick. You tell me. What do you think for you?
Um, I don't know. I guess that's why I asked. Sometimes the practice, at times, particularly given weeks like we've just had, feels like a coping mechanism rather than a facing of reality. And that part of the reaction to things that happen, like what happened in the last week, the avoidance of it, is a harbinger to it happening again, it feels like. And yet there are people who would say, oh, sort of what you just explained happened at that gathering, which is don't go there.
Mm-hmm.
And how to live that balance is, very challenging to me.
It is, and it's sort of what the whole talk was meant to be about today, where we really look at the painful things, but we also understand what is healing and comforting, not to deny those painful things, but to give us the strength to actually face them. I mean, it's all reality, to face them and then hopefully to take certain actions, to get involved in whatever way feels right to you, maybe in gun legislation, maybe I mean, there's just a million ways that people can get involved in doing something useful according to what matters most to them. I was speaking to a colleague, a Dharma teacher, who told me that when she was little, her father had, I guess she really wasn't supposed to spend time with him, but the mom somehow let her go. She was 10 years old and he threatened her with a gun. And there's more to the story that I'm not going to tell because it's too upsetting. But basically, she spent the night barricaded in the bathroom sobbing until the morning her dad had sobered up and it was safe for her to come out. Now, she has been very active in, gun legislation, and because it touched her personally, it really did. And it was a way for her to feel that she could do something positive with that terrifying childhood trauma. So, you know what I mean? I think it's so individual. Like each person will find something that matters most to their heart and hopefully do something about that. Because you're right, if the denial part is very toxic because it means that it can simply happen again. Absolutely. Listen, even if we don't deny it, it can happen again, but at least there can be measures people are actively working on to prevent that. I mean, denial, it's sort of like it serves unconsciousness, which in Buddhism is called ignorance, just not being aware of things. And that's dangerous, I'm more afraid of people who are unconscious of their motivations and their feelings than people who might be having very intensely negative ones, but they're aware of it. Because that which we're in denial about or refuse to face actually, pushing it outside of awareness gives it power to be in charge of our actions in ways that we wouldn't be aware of. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Bob. You have your hand raised.
Yes, I do. Hi, Trudy. Hi, everyone. Excuse me. I was thinking, it seems to me you talked a lot about this, and I can't remember when. It might have been back doing the Black Lives Matter thing, Trudy, but it seems to me, at least in my life, there's a sequence, which if I dwell in the good enough and other practices like that, then I build a capacity to not have to use denial as a way to cope, if that makes any sense. Because the denial has a positive function in the short run, until I develop the capacity, which includes get the support, whatever that is, usually other people for me, to look at the hard stuff, and then I don't have to just hang out in the denial. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's my thoughts about that.
Yeah, it does make sense. I think what you're saying is that the denial has a protective function, it's a defense against something that feels too much to bear. And certainly, witnessing those kindly faces of the Black people slaughtered in their neighborhood market, and then 10 days later, children killed at school. I mean, it's unbearable, really. So I think what you're talking about is that, yeah, a certain amount of denial allows us to function, but that in order to face the truth of what's happening, sometimes we really need support and comfort. And it can come from other people. To me, it needs to come from other people and the teachings. I don't know that if I was all by myself just reading the teachings, I think I have to be in a community, I have to be in a sangha like this, a sitting
Yep.
group community. Do you know what I mean? It
Yep.
requires that relational support.
And
And
a lot of meditation in my case.
yeah, but
Yeah.
that's also why, the meditation, like it wasn't done, a lot of it was done communally. The Buddha had a community and they sat together. And yes, he encouraged everybody, go in the forest, find a tree, sit by yourself, do solo practice. But they lived and ate together as a community.
Mhm.
Yeah. They gathered food together as a community.
My favorite thing to do, gather and prepare food together with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. So Natasha put in the chat, I find it easiest to be present, to dwell in the good and feel joy when I'm offline. In a, example given, backpacking. And where I live has a constant achievement-driven culture in the Bay Area. When I come back, I try to stay present, but I still find it hard to get to that level of presence. Any tips? Well, first of all, I don't know that I have the same level of presence in my busy working life where, yes, I have to get stuff done, as when I'm on retreat in nature. Or, you mentioned backpacking. When you're alone in the wilderness, or with friends, I mean, I really think like we can't expect to be able to maintain a steady state of that kind of presence, but you can bring, and I'm sure you do already, Natasha, you can bring some of that presence to just the way you are aware of the achievement driven culture that you live in. That requires awareness and presence to know about that, and to say, I have some choice. I have to participate maybe to some extent, but I can at least maintain the awareness that shows me, and that I know deeply from my own experiences out in nature, that there's far more to this life than being driven to achieve things. And when we're on our deathbed, I don't think we're going to be asking, how many awards did I get? I think we're going to be asking, did I live well? Did I have people I loved? Did people love me? These are the questions I think that matter most at the end of our life. So, yeah, that's just a common sense answer, which really is more about being, not letting the achievement driven culture make you feel like you have to achieve 100% presence all the time either, if that makes sense. That you
Yeah,
can,
no, that makes sense. Thanks, Trudy. I really like making that full circle. Like, don't become achievement driven in your presence either.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you for that question. Let's see what else in the chat. Thank you for the words on compassion and anger. I needed that reminder for some of what's happening in my life right now. I too wish I could buy some extra compassion right now. Yeah, I'm with you. I am with you. Yeah, thank you, Charles, for that teaching. It's true. It's true. Well, I just want to thank you all, because knowing that I would be speaking with you this morning, I did, probably more research and kind of investigation and study on my own part than I would have done, on the weekend of Owen's graduation, and yeah, other family things that go on around Memorial Day. So I I really feel you have enriched my life this weekend, and I thank you for that. Next week, I will not be teaching, and I'm not sure if it'll be Thomas Davis or who it will be, but we will post who will be teaching next week. And I asked, indirectly, I think it was through Caroline, who was moderating that week. I think I asked who, or maybe it was Ava, I can't remember, but I was asking, like, if you have requests of people that you enjoy when they come and teach Sundays, let the moderator know. You don't have to tell me, but you could let Anissa know. I'll sign off like right away, and then you can put it in the chat. I'll sign off a minute or so early, then you can put it in the chat if you'd like it, to be separate from me. But I think it's nice for me to know the people that speak most to you, but I'm always going to be inviting some new people as well, because not just to give them a chance to be with you, although that's part of it, but also to give you a chance to hear different voices and different perspectives, because that gives you permission to have your own take on the teachings and how they land in your life, and how you express them. So let's sit together for a moment. So at the end of this time of study and practice together, we offer the goodness of our practice, whatever has been useful, beneficial. We take that in, and then we just offer the goodness of that to all beings everywhere without exception. Just a way of sharing the blessings of what we do here. It's like an imaginative sharing. And just as I want to be happy and kind, I wish for happiness and the causes of happiness, kindness and the causes of kindness for all beings in this world. And may we really have more and more. It doesn't look like it now, but may the painful experiences of shootings and war lead to more peace and compassion on earth.
Trudy,
Yes?
could I make a really quick announcement that I think could be of use to some people?
Sure.
Okay, I'm in the racist, the whiteness, anti-racism group on Friday. And it came to my attention in that group that there is an organization brand new. It's called Justice in June. And these two women who founded it have provided, if you go to their website, you can commit to devoting 5 minutes a day or 25 minutes a day or 45 minutes a day to anti-racism. And they've provided readings and activities for every one of those days. So if anybody is interested in that, I think it's a great thing.
And the website is called
Justice in June.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Can you put that in the chat for us?
Well, you know what? I am so computer illiterate. I wrote it in the chat, but I don't know how to make it. I mean, I've typed it. It's all here, but I can't make
Don't
it
worry,
post.
Sarah. Don't worry, Sarah. Anissa will put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Justice in
Jessica, can you repeat it one more time? Justice
June.
Justice in June.
Okay, great.
I'm going to sign off. I encourage you to let Anissa know if particular teachers you'd like to have come back. And I wish you a wonderful 2 weeks. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Trudy. Bye.
Unmute everybody. You can say hi, goodbye, and come to a small group afterwards.
Yeah, we'll take a 10-minute break and then I'll see you back here.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Trudy.
Thank you, Trudy.
Thank you, Trudy.
Thank you.
You on mute?